Welcome to Today in News Tech, the podcast where we discuss innovation in digital journalism. On today's extended chat, we'll be discussing how to use Google's new Autocomplete feature to improve your website's SEO, government subsidies to force big tech to pay media organizations for news, and lastly, using first-party data to prioritize personalization. Yeah, so let's kick it off with that, actually. Let's pivot to our site, todayinnewstech.com. This article that Chris mentioned that we covered last week on Today in News Tech, SEO considerations for Google's new autocomplete feature. We have a whole commentary here from our last podcast, but we'll just do a quick review. They give this tip. There's this new autocomplete, and Google's had autocomplete for a while, but it seems that they've added a few more features to it, specifically people also ask and people also search. Just as a quick example, basically the article is explaining ways that you can kind of reverse engineer Google's ranking algorithm. By using autocomplete and looking at the other things that people are searching for to get these same results, you can use that to plug some of these keywords onto your website, start using these terms a little bit more. This is not a great example. One idea I took away from this is you could work in the mention of this Utah High School Activities Association. That seems to be ranking really high along with high school sports searches. So mentioning that organization in articles might get you higher up on the page. Going into Google, looking at what users are experiencing and adjusting your strategy that way. Even just looking at the other things that come up on the results, to see what your competition is always a good idea. People also search and people also ask. So I guess if I asked a question.
Well, that and also the Twitter carousel, Michael even gave
yes
just to that as well.
Here's people also ask. So that seems like maybe more applicable because you could be writing a headline. That's a good headline, right? What's going on in Salt Lake City this weekend? And then you could A/B test it with different variations like this, or next week you write one, what are locals doing in Salt Lake this weekend, or something like that. But the Twitter carousel, I don't see that every time. You've been using some, I know you did a bunch of examples. Was there one that worked well for this?
Maybe it was just News Rochester, New York.
Yeah, so, okay, beautiful.
There it is.
Nice example. So we got top stories from Google News. They're really controlling what people are seeing above the scroll here. They're pushing these organic results down and creating these kind of widgets, which are still organic, but a little more segmented, I guess.
And then click back in the text box at the top.
Right. So that's the other thing. Oh, so I wasn't getting this earlier. That's interesting. It seems like it's not on every search, but
it's still in beta, definitely.
Yeah. So you got the people also ask right there. You've got the other searches, similar searches. Then we've got Google News. We've got a Twitter feed. So this is what he mentioned. He had a screenshot of it. Getting yourself on Twitter, if you're the only thing talking about local news on Twitter and people are searching for it, there's a good chance that if Google tries to prioritize Twitter on a certain search, then you're going to be at the top.
And so absolutely getting all your articles out to Twitter, that's that wallpaper effect again, because you can show
exactly
up in one spot for the news, top news, and then you'll show up again in the social media carousel.
That's a pretty good follow-up to the webinar. And it's funny, we've been covering SEO so much on the podcast. I just wanted to highlight one of those stories. But we've got some other interesting news from the week from Chris. So February 24th at noon, we're going to be interviewing the two lawyers that are suing Google and Facebook to get newspapers paid for the benefits that those organizations, obviously all the profit that they're getting off of news content. So it's related to this article, but this one should be very interesting. They've been interviewed at a couple other industry podcasts, and we'll just hear about the status of the lawsuit, and you guys can ask questions. This is part of an ongoing article, right, Chris? I mean, we've been talking about Australia, France, Spain. There's a lot of countries that are putting their foot down here against big tech.
They're all mentioned to one degree or another with their role and what they're asking of these companies as well. So yeah, just play the audio version of this for us real quick.
So anyone that doesn't know, this is audio articles tool we're very proud of. It uses natural language processing and semantic understanding to transcribe the text article into a very realistic sounding article. It doesn't just read off the words like a robot. It understands the context of everything. And we can do this for every article on the website automatically. So shoot me an email if you're interested in learning more. We can do this on a third-party site or on our hometown sites. So go ahead. Thanks, Chris.
Government subsidies for newspapers in the shadow of big tech. Today, we're discussing a piece by Anya Schifrin over at the Poynter Institute about the international discussion around government subsidies for journalism. The article, Internationally Too, Journalists and Others Are Debating Government Subsidies and How to Deal with Big Tech, covers several strategic interventions to offset the effects of big tech on smaller media outlets. Here are the highlights. Australia's News Media Bargain Code is widely viewed as a game changer. The code may not serve the needs of big and small publishers equally, but it is forcing big tech to pay media organizations for news. Another point of tension in many countries is how to design policies that don't just benefit the incumbent outlets. Events like the US elections and the COVID-19 pandemic, and related misinformation that spread as rapidly as the virus, have also provided stark reminders that serious journalism remains vital to the proper functioning of societies. At our hometown, we constantly strive to find novel and sustainable ways for our customers to generate revenue. From automation, personalized ad networks to sophisticated SEO management, our WordPress platform provides all the tools needed.
Pull up those bullet points again, just go through these one at a time.
And as I said, the original article is one of those more of a 15-minute read. And so I kind of just borrowed some highlights from some of the large sections that seem to kind of grasp at some things that we've touched on before, but can definitely keep expanding upon.
Please come to the webinar in a month. You'll learn all about at least one of the cases in the US. I'm sure there's more, but Australia is leading the game here. But I've heard reports about them not paying out small publishers. I think we may have even had an article on this. So what you have over there is typical politics. Rupert Murdoch, in charge of News Corp, his organizations are getting paid because he's very tight with the government there. But some of the smaller ones are falling through the cracks. I don't know what I would say other than as we look at what to do in the US, we need to really think about the smaller publishers because they're the ones hurting the most. They cover communities that no one else is. So we kind of need to prioritize them in this negotiation. I don't know. What do you guys think?
In the original article, there's a couple of things distinctly mentioned of complaints and with FTC and some other things about how disproportionate the dispensation of the subsidy actually is, depending on the size of the organization. And that's kind of hinted at in the incumbent outlets where there's a disproportionate amount also going to longer standing outlets instead of going to startups.
That kind of reminds me of what we saw with that beta feature of where you can see all the background that Google has on each link, but determining who is trustworthy, who is authoritative is huge. So there's certain technical things that we can do, certainly with the site schema and things like that. But other than that, it's just about having, I think, a footprint in the community, both physically and digitally.
Well, there's a study here by or a co-study by one of the authors, Saving Journalism 2, Global Strategies and a Look at Investigative Journalism, which helps locals, as you were just saying, find funding sources.
Right.
These, because a lot of this is subsidy work, finding funding sources while advertising is down because of the pandemic and for other reasons.
Right. Very cool. Yeah, I was just thinking, since this is such a long article, let's post the link to it in the chat. Also related to Google, this is a story that we are following. And when I first started getting into this, I wasn't even quite sure what they meant about, the abolishment of third-party cookies.
Using first-party data to prioritize personalization. In this episode, the team discusses a piece by Jürgen Galler, CEO and founder, OnePlusX, over at Digital Content Next about building trust through personalization. The article, Why Prioritizing Personalization Can Build Trust Between Consumers and Brands, offers 3 main points. We know that third-party cookies and comprehensive third-party data collection will most likely become obsolete. As a result, the businesses that invest and implement first-party data strategies will stay ahead of the pack. Consumers now expect a seamless transition across every touchpoint they have with a company. Therefore, prioritizing creation of an omni-channel experience will help increase overall ROI. A data infrastructure with intelligent AI and predictive capabilities can enable brands to enrich and enhance their first-party data. Said Galler, our hometown is constantly innovating to remain competitive with the latest technology trends.
Some of the ways that you've characterized related articles in the past and how we might be very upfront and very transparent and say, well, this is what we want to do for your personalization. And this seemed to emphasize that we should be trending towards that way.
In the chat, let's take a quick poll here. Has anyone used any kind of recommendations engine on your website to suggest articles to people? Because what we're working on is most of the out-of-the-box CMSs will provide a recommendation channel, usually at the bottom of articles. Sometimes, unfortunately, those links go to other sites. Those are like third-party sponsored content. I think that erodes your trust with your readers. You want to keep them on the site. So what we have is a related stories section. It's like that. It's the same philosophy. You get to the bottom of an article, you're more likely to click on these other stories if they're related. So we're not just showing articles that are from the same category that were recently published on the site. We are actually using natural language processing to tag these articles, what they are about on a high level, not just matching keywords, because sometimes those could be misleading. They have different meanings, but looking at the actual meaning of the sentences and the phrases used. That's one part of it. But the first party data is taking in the personalization. So that's a whole nother layer that you can add to improve the quality of the recommendations. And I think anyone that is collecting data on their users and using it to personalize the experience, I think we just want to be upfront about that, because a lot of people understand what's going on. They know that they're being tracked. But if you just tell them up front, yes, we would like to track you, but it's to do these things. It's to improve the recommendations of the stories, to send you a weekly personalized newsletter of stories from our website, something like that. That's kind of hard to say no to. What they're used to is having no real clear agreement where they opted in. I mean, there's some point where they probably check the terms of service to allow Google to do all this, but they're just being tracked, it seems like, without their consent, and they're seeing these ads all over the place. We're not going to be using this for advertising. It's purely to deliver a better content experience for the subscribers, because our main focus is digital subscriptions as a revenue source.
And Matt, the related articles featured, that already syncs across viewings on either mobile or desktop.
True. Good point. Really good point on that. That would sync up because it's all going to be the same user that's logged in. So
that addresses the personalization for omni-channel experiences.
No doubt about that. Yeah. As a subscriber to like the New York Times, I want to be able to just pull it up whatever device I'm on and be logged in and have it remember all my activity and remember my favorites or the things that I want to read later. All that stuff needs to be seamless, like you said. Nice article. Anything else you want to mention on this one? We're just about out of time, but any other comments? I think we've answered everything from our attendees. So thank you all so much for joining us. This is the first time we've tried this with the podcast. Normally, we just record sort of on our own, but this is one of the first live recordings. So thank you for joining us. Check us out at our-hometown.com. If you're interested in any of the SEO optimization that we talked about today, this is all stuff that we're just going to take care of for you. Today was designed as a presentation that you can take and apply this stuff. And that was absolutely the goal. But a lot of people don't have the resources or just the know-how to do that necessarily. So we'll take care of that all for you as part of the website launch. Contact us at our-hometown.com. I'll drop a link to the website right here in the chat one more time. We'd be happy to do a free prototype for you if you just send us a PDF of your paper. Thank you all very much. And we'll hopefully see you at the next webinar in February. Appreciate it.